my friend sobbing in law school, saying, this is the face of communist China. Do you really want this here in America, where you have divisive saying that, well, one party is oppressed and the other party caused it and therefore we're never going to get along? That's not the way that our country works. If we're getting our pharmaceuticals from the Communist Party in China, and then we have a real need for it, they have control then over our freedom.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Cathy show. I'm your host, Cathy Zhang. And today we're going to talk about the gubernatorial race for the primary. And so specifically we'll be focusing on the Maryland governor race. Okay, so before we start, for our viewers, if you can just click likes and just make sure you are subscribed. So, and spread our show, we really appreciate it. So, as you may know that for this midterm election, there are 36 states and the territories have governor races. And so what are the partisan composition of that? Is that 28 Republican governors and the 22, in total in 50 states, 28 GOP versus 22 Democrats. And in this midterm, in 36 states, 20 incumbents are Republicans and 16 Democrats. So why we focus on Maryland? And because right now, as reported by some of the media, like Politico, saying that there's a Democrats has an increasing common playbook. And what is that? They are trying to boost the candidates, the GOP candidates that's endorsed by Trump. And what the narrative is that, just to have a very some kind of GOP candidate that is far, very right, so that it can be more easily to be defeated in the general election by the Democrats. So that's what's reported in the media. However, is that the facts or truth? It's just up for debate, right? So in Maryland, just 5 days ago, starting July 1st, the Democrats in Maryland started a very aggressive campaign against one of the major GOP candidate, Dan Cox, and he has been endorsed by President Trump. And what they are saying is that it's the advertisement is like $1 million advertisement by the Democratic Governors Association. And their narrative is, Dan Cox is 100% pro-life and refusing to support any federal restrictions on guns. And the title is Dan Cox is too close to Trump, too conservative for Maryland. And they claim that the end goal of this ad is really not to sink Cox. Instead, they're trying to boost him in the July 19th Republican primary for governor, which, right now in this Republican primary in Maryland, there's a very close race between Dan Cox and the other candidate, Kelly Schultz, who is endorsed by the incumbent governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan. So, in total, in this Maryland gubernatorial race, there are 16 candidates, 4 GOPs, 1 Libertarian, and the rest 11 Democratic Party candidates. And the election will be on July 19th. So indeed, whether this playbook, this strategy by the Democrats will work or not, we'll have a discussion after I show you the interview. So I happened to had an interview with Dan Cox back, a couple of months ago, and so it's I think it's really interesting to really try to understand, who is he and why he is endorsed by President Trump, especially if you are from Maryland. But overall, just nationwide in 36 states, it seems like the governor race is also one of the major battleground for both parties. So a brief introduction of Dan Cox. He studied in the Navy Academy and later become a constitutional lawyer. He was elected. Currently, he serves in the Maryland House of Delegates, the House of Delegates, representing District 4, and when he was since he was elected in 2018. And so my interview with him, of course, started with why he decided to run for governor. So without further ado, let's take a look of my interview. Dan, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and privilege to be part.
Dan, so why do you decide to run for the governor in Maryland?
Because freedom matters and we need to restore freedom in Maryland. In my background, I spent 10 years in private education. I worked to expand educational alternative choice, making sure parents had options for choice for their children. And in doing that, I realized through working with the legislature that our freedoms were under attack, that actually some of the socialistic principles that they are espousing in the legislature is to say that parents should not have a voice at all in their children's education. That's not true. It's not.
That's back
wrong.
when?
Well, this was in the last 20 years.
Because right now people are starting to realize that during the pandemic.
That's right, and it's only gotten worse now during the pandemic, and a lot of, the silver lining, I guess, from the pandemic is that it's kind of awakened people to realizing what's going on, that the government is not using the school system to build up the family and to build up the opportunities for education and choice and freedom, but instead is using it to tear down our country, to tear down the family unit structure, to teach children to hate one another or to be divisive, and to really cause dependency on the state. And that's obviously the exact opposite of what education is for.
So, but you actually noticed 20 years ago.
Well, sure, and in my background, I worked in home education, so as part of the private education movement and work, the option for homeschooling became popular in the 80s, 1980s. And of course, in the pandemic, we've seen it only explode. So for the last 17 years as a constitutional lawyer, one of the reasons why I've operated my law firm is to protect and defend parents' rights, to protect and defend private schools, institutions to have education programs, and to make sure that education access and choice is available to all people. The government schools don't want that. The teachers' unions want only one choice, and that's whatever they say. And so it's a fight, it's a battle. But that took me into politics in some respects, and so that's what I'm doing here, running for governor. CoxForFreedom.com. One of my 5 points is to make education choice a primary issue for Maryland, that they can have the opportunity that parents need to have the money follow the child.
Same issue in California right now, actually.
It is. It's a universal concern. It's a nationwide concern. We see this happening especially in the blue states, such as California and Maryland. And so it's, I think, even more essential in the blue states to make sure the parents have that option and the choice, because when the money follows the child, we all know that both public schools and private schools, and better, they get a increased benefit. The children the test scores go up, and at the end of the day, we have a better outcome. And right now, it's very bad in Maryland. Baltimore City, for instance, we have a 1% test rate for graduates. We have less than 50% of our graduates in Baltimore City that can read at a grade level, at their grade level. That's just not right. That's not doing them a service. And so the way you fix that is you expand educational options for parents. So they can say, that school is a failing school. It's not giving you a good education. We're going to take that money We're going to take it to a private school that will make sure they get the education they need.
Yeah, so in terms of the education, they are trying to get rid of the merit-based admission and they're trying to make more equity, right, between different races. How do you see it?
I see it from a natural rights and natural law perspective because we are made in the imago Dei, the image of God. And when you look at people as people who've been made by God and therefore have been endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights, then every person that walks on the earth has something that no governor and no state can take away. And that's the right that they have to respect, to individualism, to freedom, and to the opportunity to learn. And learn without state ties and state bondage, where you have divisive saying that, well, one party is oppressed and the other party caused it and therefore we're never going to get along. That's not the way that our country works. Our country works with empowering and building up people. And that comes when we respect individual rights. Equity reverses that. Equity is not equality. Equality is what America is built on, that every single person is equal before God and has the same privilege and opportunity. And if they are denied a privilege and opportunity, then the law corrects that. But not so with equity. Equity says that one group has has been set aside to have more opportunities than others. And therefore, because of your particular group, which right now it might be the white Christian male, in the future it could be another group. That's why there's a problem with the equity movement. The whole equity idea is really a false view of our individuals and who we are made in God's image. And so that actually has legal ramifications because under natural law principles, which our Constitution is founded on, we can't treat people equally if we're going to try to inculcate them with equity in the classroom. Because equity says that, okay, we're not going to hire you because of your skin color. Or, oh, you can't participate in that particular function because of your ethnicity. Well, that's not America.
Yeah, but what they are saying is, oh, we need a certain percentage for each kind of race or for particular race, right? So what do you think what's the problem over there?
Well, the problem for any kind of affirmative action program that says that we have to meet a quota is that's demeaning to the individual. Individuals have, with equality, have opportunities to compete. And competition's good because it says that that person can shine. Every single person has their own gifts. And when they're given the opportunities to utilize those gifts and to expand that, they can shine in what they've been called to do. And that's how innovation happens. That's how you have your future Elon Musks and your future, inventors and your future patents. People who really get motivated to use their gifts to advance freedom and better society. The problem, though, when you have quotas, you're just picking certain people because of their skin color or their background, their ethnicity. And the end result of that is it demeans that person that was picked, number one. And number two, it also demeans the job they're doing because they might not be necessarily qualified for the job. So it's a really bad program. Now, what we need to do instead is if we're saying that, okay, in this particular workforce, you only have this demographic represented, and we can prove that that's because of actions that are wrong, that the company maybe didn't favor a particular group. Well, that's a different issue. We can deal with that. It's called civil rights laws. I do that in my legal practice. My other hat, I defend people who have been discriminated against under the Civil Rights Code, both in Maryland and federally. It's illegal, whether it's because of disenfranchising a minority or whether it's reverse discrimination against a white individual. It's both illegal under federal law right now. So I always try to ask the question, well, how can you have affirmative action become legal? Because somebody could sue. And the only way to overcome that is if you have a court judgment saying, well, we're going to go ahead and allow this illegality because of the greater good of affirmative action. But as I mentioned before, it's not a greater good.
So under the current GOP governor, Larry Hogan, Maryland is doing a lot of business with China, like $3.2 billion a year. However, Dan Cox saw a serious problem in that. So why is that?
Well, in Maryland, we do quite a bit of business with the CCP, unfortunately. I'm all for freedom and for the Chinese people to be free, and so I think that if there are free Chinese businesses, we should do business with them. But that's not what's happening in Maryland entirely. In Maryland, we have an office for business in Rockville that's dedicated especially to doing international contracts with the office in Beijing. So we're one of the few states in the United States that has an office in the CCP system in Beijing, China, where we do business with communist universities in China. The Chinese Communist government has contracts in Maryland. We do biomedical research contracts, whereas the University of Maryland's entire research department is run in large part with CCP money. That kind of entanglement is dangerous for freedom because we should not be empowering the communist Chinese government, which is oppressive in China. Right now there's Uyghurs in concentration camps. Right now the Falun Gong is being persecuted. Right now Christians can't meet openly. They have to go underground in their churches or else be registered. All of this is not freedom. And yet here we are in Maryland, the free state, doing contracts and business. $3.2 billion a year we do through the Beijing office. And that's going to change on my watch. I'm going to say no more with the CCP. If a business has a Communist Party member who's an owner, they're not going to get a contract in Maryland.
How about the other kind of relationships relates to this pandemic, the treatment, drugs, and other things?
Oh yeah, well it's as we all know, the big pharma industry, the pharmaceuticals have grown over 11 billionaires, many of who were members of the Chinese Communist Party, some of who, and some of which have contracts here in Maryland. So we do biomedical research. We also have a new global pandemic center going in Rockville, Maryland. And these entities will continue to allow China, the CCP, to have tremendous influence in our biopharmaceutical industry. That's concerning to me when you look at how Dr. Fauci has had these inappropriate relationships through the NIH to do research in China that was forbidden by the United States Congress. And that kind of work needs to be questioned, needs to be looked into, and then we need to make sure that we don't have those contracts. It's important because if we're getting our pharmaceuticals from the Communist Party in China, and then we have a real need for it, they have control then over our freedom, because we could literally be cut off from our pharmaceuticals at a time of need, just like what happened here in Maryland.
So seeing all these, including the infiltration by the Chinese Communist Party, so how do you see, for example, in the state of Maryland, how much of awareness people have with regards to those issues?
They're becoming more aware, but honestly, we need to continue to do a lot of work in that area. A lot of people don't understand. Because we love the Chinese people, no one wants to look like we're discriminating. But most people don't understand that the Chinese people themselves don't want the CCP. That's why I have the largest Chinese support of any governor candidate in Maryland. No one else has hundreds of people supporting me in the Chinese community, and I've had that privilege because of one reason. Chinese Americans know what the CCP is capable of doing. Their families going through it. They may have escaped it themselves. So they know what's possible, and they also know that a lot of the issues that they have dealt with, they're starting to see come to America. And so they're concerned. I think that is helping, and I think that the more that people hear about these stories, it's important. That's why I'm out here running, and I think it's going to make a difference. Unfortunately, a lot of our youth, though, are being brainwashed, I believe, in the public schools on some of these issues of Marxism. They're taught that Marxism is a good thing. Well, all you have to do is go down to Cuba, and you can see that it's a horrible thing. You know, the gas lines and the bread lines, they're there. I've seen the video just as Video as recent as last week. Venezuela, just disasters. And even in China, where communism has a firm hold, it's not glorious. You know, they still have great needs with their infrastructure, with their problems with their families. I had a friend in law school who sobbed and cried when he told his story about his wife. They found out they were expecting their second child in China. And they lived on the border of Tibet and China. The Chinese government came. They said, "Oh, you didn't post your period in the public square." And they tried to hide. They tried to get away from the, they tried to leave get into the countryside. They wouldn't let them leave. They said, "Okay, your wife has to go have an abortion on such and such a date, or else we will take her into custody." So at the end of the day, they refused the abortion. The Chinese communist agents came, the soldiers, they arrested her. They took her to the hospital and they forced her to have an abortion. I'll never forget my friend sobbing in law school, saying, "This is the face of communist China. Do you really want this here in America? We need to make sure that doesn't happen." And the beginning of that, I believe, was this pandemic. Because you have overreaching executive orders taking possession of our very bodies. We're not going to let that happen on my watch.
Wow.
CoxForFreedom.com.
The Chinese Communist government have a list of all the 50 governors of the United States.
Yes.
And kind of categorize them.
Yes.
Friendly to China, in the middle, or against, hostile.
Right.
You're aware of that.
I am.
So what do you think of it?
Mike Pompeo did us a good service to tell us about this, and he warned my governor, who's a rhino. He's a Republican in name only. He is not following our conservative America First values, and he is doing business with the Communist Chinese, and he is on the list as a potential friendly, a neutral. And I think that's to cover him, because we're one of the best states for the CCP in America. $3.2 billion a year, right out of Maryland. And I think the CCP is covering for that. Obviously, at a minimum, what the problem that we see from that is that our state, our governor, hasn't understood the dangers that we're facing. He flew to China and did a photo op with the Communist Chinese. I have a picture of it, where they signed a deal for this trade relationship. That shouldn't be. The United States Constitution says that trade relationships are for the federal government, not for the state. It's actually forbidden. Governor Hogan did it anyway. So I want to reverse that and make sure we all, protect our freedoms, protect those who come here. And I think that by, exposing it and making sure that people understand that the CCP has very strong interests in our states, that's going to go a long way to helping the people understand what's going on.
Yeah, also it's actually against the law to sign as a state.
Yes.
But a lot of states are doing that, including California.
Yes, it's very true. And my opponent, the Hogan-picked individual that I'm running against, the former Commerce Secretary, she signed deals with international governments under Hogan's watch, and Hogan signed them with her. Our governor signed them with her. The problem with this is not only does it violate the Constitution, it doesn't provide for appropriate oversight of the people, because no Marylander understood that we were involved in international treaties and agreements. They don't call them treaties, they call them business agreements,
right.
Corporate agreements. Well, states are not to be doing that. We saw him fly to Paris, and after President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Accords, Governor Hogan flew to Paris and signed Maryland into the Paris Accords. That's not right. And with the Commerce Department in Maryland, we've been signing contracts while our Commerce Secretary locked down the state from Maryland businesses. All Maryland businesses were closed except for those who she deemed essential. At the same moment, she was signing deals with international businesses and international governments to do business in Maryland and with Maryland through state contracts. So I'm going to end that.
Elected officials, do they really not aware of doing that is not legal, or they just wanted to do it?
I think they've pushed the envelope and they've tried to get a loophole by saying that these are business agreements and they're just facilitating commerce. And we know that under the federal constitution, commerce has largely been left to the states, but it's not completely left to the states under the Dormant Commerce Clause. Under the Commerce Clause, the federal government has great authority to regulate commerce as well. And so I think they're just simply getting away with it through a loophole because of business and because ultimately the tax revenue comes into the federal government as well. I think they're just doing it. But the problem needs to be examined. I think we need to look at it more carefully, especially now with Ukraine and Russia and China. I think we need to be very cautious about these agreements.
Yeah, because Chinese government use this business relationship to deal with the state level.
That's right.
Government here.
And by doing that, they bypass all of the scrutiny that they might have received from the federal government's spy agencies or agencies that review business agreements, the Department of Justice that might want to review the contracts to make sure that they're complying with federal law. So some of that's being bypassed. I think they're still looking carefully. I think the NSA and other groups, the federal government obviously still protects us. But it is a problem. It's a growing problem. And I think it's just unfortunate that we've, and I support commerce. I support open relationships, but not at the detriment of freedom. It's always been a concern of mine. Ever since, reading about it, and I was born at the time when Nixon signed the agreement with China. Okay. So, but reading about that, I've always been concerned about not having a bright line, though, between private enterprise and the CCP. We could and we still can say, no, if you want freedom, then give it to the people. Get the government, get the Chinese Communist Party out of the business. And once that happens, China will blossom, I think. The government will be kept much more limited.
Yeah, now in China, even though they say there's private enterprises, but they have the law saying that each and every individual entities, you have the obligation to turning the intelligence to the government.
There it is.
Yeah.
So that way they can use their business structure to basically continue to gather power and information for an oppressive regime.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah, and for example, how they use the business relationship to control the state legislations here in California. A few years ago, there one state senator raised a resolution to condemn the persecution of Falun Gong, just as a expression, right?
Right.
The Chinese consulate in San Francisco wrote a letter, also made a phone call saying, if you do that, it's going to hurt our business relationship.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where Americans should draw the line, because we believe in freedom and the natural and individual liberties that everyone should have. So to say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and do billions of dollars of business while you arrest people and put them in camps, that's not right. It's got to end. And I think Maryland can help lead the way in that. Maryland has led the way with business growth in some ways. I mean, we do have a great, vibrant industrial center. We have a kind of almost like California, a little bit of a cyber community because of the federal government being right there in Maryland. And not quite as big as Silicon Valley, but it's close. I mean, we have some good businesses in Maryland. I think we can lead the way in this regard to expand the freedoms for all people and say, let's draw a hard line here. We're not going to do business with the communists. No. And we're going to require that you release your people. Stop arresting them. Start providing these freedoms that we have in the Bill of Rights. It works. I mean, just look. Why would the Chinese want to do business with us? Because we're prosperous. It's a good nation. They need our money.
Exactly.
And it can work there too.
Yes, great. Yeah, so anything else you would like our audience to, know about?
So yeah, I just want the Chinese American people to understand your voice is stronger than you might know. When we rise up, when we stand up, when we speak out, as you are doing, and I thank you for it, it impacts culture. And many of the socialists that I deal with in the Maryland legislature have nothing to say to someone like you, because you know much more than a white American male. You can speak to these issues. And so I would just plead with your audience to consider how they might run for office. We need more Chinese Americans in office. We need you to run for delegate. We need to run for school board. We need you to run for Congress, run for president. And that's going to make a big difference. It's going to change things. I'm honored and privileged, Cathy. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
So that's Dan Cox, the GOP candidate for the governor of Maryland. So as I, talked about before, there are totally 16 candidates in this race, 4 from the Republican Party, 1 Libertarian, and 11 in the Democrats. And in the Democratic Party includes like the former Attorney General of Maryland, Doug Gassler, former Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez, among others. And among the 4 GOP candidates, Dan Cox and Kelly Schultz, the 2 of them are it seems to be the major players, the front runners. And the one is endorsed by the former President Trump, the other endorsed by the incumbent Governor Larry Hogan. So actually, I have, during this interview, we talked about other issues which Dan Cox also expressed his view on how he viewed the federal restrictions and especially the current governor's restriction policies during this pandemic. But for the reasons that we cannot really show this part of the interview on YouTube. But we'll see. I can put that part on Safe Chat maybe tomorrow. So for especially if you are interested in really learning about him, and especially I don't know among our audience right now if there are anyone from Maryland. If you could let us know. You can leave a message there. So yeah, and it seems that just a few days ago, the Democratic Party, which is called the Democratic Governors Association, launched a huge campaign they said they want to boost Dan Cox's candidacy so that he can make it to the general election and can face the Democratic Party candidate. And they expect in that way he can be easily defeated. So how do you think of this strategy, right? So would that work? Would that really kind of, make first of all, I think if this strategy just try to make a sense of it, they are hoping to maybe just kind of scare some of the Republican supporters, saying, "Hey, you cannot support a Trump endorsed candidate." So that that's one kind of effect, right? And then the other effect could be more maybe Republicans will support Dan Cox, which they claim in that way the Democratic Party candidate can easily defeat him in the general election. Would that be the case, right? So it could go either way. So what do you think? You really wanted to see how you feel, how you assess such kind of strategy. Would that work for the Democratic Party, or they would regret that they boost Trump-supported candidate? So it's going to be interesting to see. So right now, what happened in the other states, it seems to be that the results are mixed. For example, in the state of Illinois, the Democratic Governors Association and the current Democratic governor, Pittsburgh, they actually, spent tons of money, like tens of millions of dollars, and so the Republican candidate is our, Trump, like a more like a more conservative candidate. However, in Pennsylvania also, the candidate for the governor is who won the GOP primary was the state senator Doug Mastriano, who's really a Trump supporter. So, would the Democrats really think will get their pick at the end of the general election, or they will regret doing so, right? So let's take a look at some of your comments. Okay, let's see. Yeah, oh yeah. So wanted to really thank Daniel and the Zoom for your kind of support. Really appreciate it. And Louis said, I like this guy. Maryland needs his leadership. And so Larry, you said he sounds like a winner. And I saw someone, I think that's John or someone said he is, facing a steep hill. So Maryland is pretty blue state, and but since 2014, the current governor Larry Hogan, he won the governor seat and has been holding that for 2 terms. He's termed out this year. So, and I saw some discussion about the partisanship. So, let's see. Serena said trusting either party is stupid, and Jeff said only 2 parties is stupid also. So yeah, how do you think, how does the partisanship plays here? But right now, some comments are saying, I think the issue may not be just partisanship, because in this race right now, it's among the Republican Party, but it's more about on the surface is more about whether the Republican Party is a Trump's party or just a more kind of establishment Republican. But maybe deep down, it's more about the America First policy. What do you think? And Louis said the most important thing is if you're a citizen, you just need to get out to vote. And I totally agree with that. Really, no matter how we feel the system is not perfect, however, it is, democracy is messy, and the system does needs room, have room to improve. However, so far it is one of the best system on earth, and especially coming from countries like China and the totalitarian regime, people just have no rights to vote. They have no choice, and they cannot really voice with their votes. And here, if we just kind of be passive because of we think the system is not perfect, I think it may work against what we intend to do. So that's just my own opinion. But we can, if everybody just voice out, and we can always improve make the efforts to improve, and we can just elect the of people that we believe can represent us, right? Represent yourself, and that's the way to move forward. But it for if we just saying, okay, we just don't vote or don't do anything because we don't like it, then how can things be improved, right? And Jeff said, yeah, good job with the interview. Thank you. All right. And wow, they really have a lot of discussion here. I think it's great. Jeff said, Wayne and Cathy are very honest, hardworking, and legit. One of the best news sources. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all, have been with us. And we just really love this country. We appreciate what America has been offering to us, the new immigrants. Really a lot of opportunities, a lot of hope. Although, we all know it's not perfect. However, it is the greatest country on earth right now. And, if we're really concerned about it, we just do whatever we can to make it make improvements, right? So, wow, Daniel, thank you again for your support, for your donation. Wow. Luis said, yes, as usual, Cathy is a great interview. Thank you. Oh, Daniel is asking, Cathy, are you all settled in? Kind of. Okay, so the drive across the country really is, it's quite an experience. It's tiring. It is, but it is indeed. Overall, I really enjoy it. Right now, trying to settle down, but still a lot of work to do, and not totally settled down. But I'm gonna do more travel just down the road. I think that's it's gonna be like that for a while, going back and forth. But yeah, and I just try to do the best to keep up with the show. Trying to bring interesting topics, interview interesting guests for you to share with you. So Jeff said. Jeff said that I just tried durian fruit. I let it get too ripe and wasn't very good. Wow. So, Jeff, you are very brave. Well, that's what I can say. But I love durian fruit. But it's not it won't be, it cannot, a lot of people may not like it. Some people for people who like it, they love it. But for people who may not appreciate the taste, the smell, you will just hate it. So if you haven't tried, just like Jeff, try it. But yeah, if you get it too ripe, maybe you don't, it won't be the best. But wow, Jeff, that's good. Louis said, oh yes, we also want to hear about your move out of California and into the mouth of another lion. Well, it's yes and no. Right now, it is we moved to the New York, but actually it's not in the city of New York. Rural part of New York, which is very beautiful. more conservative, I would say. And so, yeah, we'll have find the time to chat about that more. Serene said, "Oh my God, during is painful." Okay. Larry said that this country is great because of patriots like you in the way. Well, thank you, Larry, and also because you know, Larry and Louis and everybody, you know, a lot of people, a lot of folks here. So, yeah. And Jeff said that the Asian guy that sold it to me laughed at me. Well, I can imagine that. But truly, you are brave. But I hope next time you will, you know, don't let it sit for too long, and you may enjoy that better. And out to New York is supposed to be beautiful. Jeff, you said that right. Very beautiful. You know, I can will share some of the sceneries here later. But it's we just saw like the ducks, or maybe that's goose, just across the road, like all the time, a whole family, and we have to stop car and let it pass, and I cannot help just to take out my cell phone to film it. And then we see the deers all the time. They take people's backyard as their home. So it's really beautiful scenery here, very different from California. So, and yes, the gas price is just so different. Although I heard people here saying that 2 years ago, the gas only is about like a little bit over $2. Now it's about, average speaking, I think here is about $4.80, which is still better, much better than in California. Yeah, Jeff said the geese do that in Minnesota also. It's super cute. Yes, and that reminds me of back in Iowa City when we just came to this country. I've mentioned Iowa is like my home state. And during the time in the University of Iowa, we always see those geese or ducks, around the pond. And back in China, if those geese or ducks, when they see people, they will just run because otherwise they may be caught and be in the woks, right, on the dishes. But here in whether it's in Iowa City or here in the rural New York, the geese and ducks, they just walk and they don't care people just nearby. So I think it tells a lot about the difference between here and China. So all right, so yeah, it's time flies. It's almost 1 hour now. Really enjoy. I hope you enjoy the show here, and so appreciate. I think everybody here click the likes, and really, really appreciate. Again, appreciate Daniel for your kind donations and support, and the Zoom, and also everyone here. Really enjoy having the show with you. And so I think that's it for tonight. And have a great night. Be safe. And we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.